We're going to begin the last part of the lecture on social, legal, and ethical issues. We will begin with assisted reproduction. Look at the pictures in this slide. You should recognize Natalie Suleiman and her 8 premature babies. They are now 6 years of age. What a fiasco that was and still is. She is on welfare and raising 14 children as a single mother. The physician lost his license due to gross negligence. He clearly stepped over the line by implanting 12 embryos. He jeopardized the health of the mother as well as the babies by doing so. Society has to bear the burden if and when these children have problems: health, physical disabilities, learning disabilities. Another ethical question that comes up that we have to consider is who owns the unused embryos when a couple splits up? Remember earlier this year, Sofia Vergara, a television star, and her significant other who split up, they are battling over this issue in court. Other ethical dilemmas affected by assisted reproduction include the finances. Who pays? Should it be covered by insurance? Did you know that one cycle of in vitro fertilization costs $12,500? And there is no guarantee that it is going to work. What happens when a person desires pregnancy and does not have the money or insurance coverage? Should we pay as taxpayers? Who pays the bill for NICU as a result of a multiple gestation pregnancy and the baby was born prematurely? Who pays the NICU bill for any preterm uninsured delivery? Well, I'll tell you right now, you and I are, because we pay our taxes. And so the state picks up the tab and we're paying the state. Another question: should the state or federal governments use tax dollars to pay for assisted reproduction? And so what I really like about ethical dilemmas is it really gets your emotions going and your thoughts going, but you become very vulnerable when you have to debate the issue with your peers, with your family. But it really exposes who you are. Another question: whose child is it anyway? When we have donated embryos or eggs, who does that child belong to? Do those who donate really have a right to get those children? In fact, there was just an episode on Law and Order that I saw this week about that very issue, because a doctor decided to implant somebody else's eggs into a woman and she never gave her permission, and he was discovered. What about surrogate parenting? So we implant embryos into a woman, she carries this pregnancy for someone, and then after 9 months she goes into labor, she delivers the baby, and all it takes is that one look at the baby and she can change her mind. That is really tough for all the people involved. So there's no right or wrong answer here. I am bringing up issues that address our moral and ethical framework. But we are nurses. We are going to be faced with some of these questions. People are going to start asking you. And so just think about it. Think about what would you say. Let's move on to another issue, umbilical cord blood banking. This technology has been in existence for close to 25 years. But how good is it? How often is it being used? It costs $1,200 initially to bank the blood, and then it's anywhere between $100 to $150 per year to maintain it in somebody's freezer. Now, when you look at the medical research, they estimate that 1 in 3 cord blood and stem cells may benefit someone in the future. And we're looking at diabetes, heart disease, brain injury, stroke prevention, and hearing loss as possible uses of what we have banked. We're also thinking that it's going to be beneficial in treating hematopoietic cancer. So this is our leukemias, our lymphomas, and possibly genetic disorders. But they don't have it all figured out. And should everybody have the right to save their stem cells? It's really a problem. Just think about it. Would you? And if you never used it, what would you do with it? Because after all, it's part of your baby. What if they start manipulating these stem cells? And all of a sudden you have a child out there that looks like your kid's, but it's not your kid. Who knows where this is going? What if your child is cloned? I'd just like to throw out the questions to you. So last but not least is the ethical dilemma of pregnancy termination. The dilemma is based on 2 questions. Number 1, is the fetus a person with rights? And there's many questions around that, because when is the fetus a person? Some people say this very second it is conceived, and others argue, oh no, it isn't until that baby starts moving. Who's right? The second question is, does the woman have the right to decide whether to carry the pregnancy or terminate it? About half of women of reproductive age will have at least one unintended pregnancy. And, this is really going to get confusing to you, half of all pregnancies are unplanned, and close to half of those unintended pregnancies are terminated. In 1973, when Roe v. Wade was passed, elective pregnancy termination became widespread and available to all. It continues to be an ethical problem and is often in the news for a variety of reasons. And the latest issue around it was 3rd trimester terminations. So here's a question for you. Is the nurse obligated to participate in pregnancy termination and counseling? The answer is no. The Affordable Care Act protects nurses and others from participating in pregnancy termination if it is contradictory to your personal, religious, or moral beliefs. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to keep your job. It just means that you do not have to participate. So if you don't hold the conviction, if you hold these moral and religious convictions do not apply at Planned Parenthood, do not apply at an outpatient surgery center where elective terminations are performed. I posted a link on Blackboard to an excellent document that discusses the issue of abortion. You can review it at your leisure. I would mark it in your favorites so that you can really see what the issues are, because it's going to help you to sift through other ethical dilemmas that are going to come your way in your career. So I'm going to go back to this last slide. I clicked on it a little too soon earlier. So, what do you need to know so that you can participate in the discussion, counsel patients, etc.? You need to be knowledgeable about the issue in terms of legal and ethical standpoint. What are the laws and regulations in your state? Realize that emotions are involved, and it's very distressful. It's distressful for the patient who has to make the decision to terminate, because it actually may be against their own moral and religious beliefs, but they feel they have no other choice. And so you have to be non-judgmental. Recognize that for many people, pregnancy termination is a violation of personal and religious views that give meanings to their lives. So don't get in arguments with people about this. They really see this as a personal attack, and you are going to be a professional nurse. You don't want to be seen in that light. And also acknowledge that people have very strong convictions on both sides of this issue. So you need to stop and think about your position, and how will you discuss the opposite position if you're ever in that situation. So thank you for listening to the lecture about social, legal, and ethical issues in women's health. I probably raised more questions than I answered, but these are questions that you really need to be thinking about. Okay? So that's the end of the lecture. Thanks for listening.